Okay, we will reconvene for land use. County Manager Todd Leopold, if you
Yes.
can call the first case.
Yes, good morning. Our one land use case for today is RCU 2015-9. It's a case named Saddlehorn Pipeline, and Chris LaRue with our Neighborhood Services Department will be handling this case.
Okay, thank you. This is the Saddlehorn Pipeline. It's case RCU 2015-9. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow approximately 24 miles of a 537 miles 20-inch underground crude oil pipeline from 168th Avenue and Peoria Crossing Road southeast through Adams County to East 72nd Avenue and Meridian Road. Quick summary of previous requests. There was case number RCU 2008-9. That was the SimCrude. White Cliffs crude oil pipeline was approved by the County Commissioners on July 23rd of 2008, and that pipeline was constructed that year. Case RCU 2013-27, it was called the White Cliffs Twin Pipeline, was approved by the County Commissioners on March 17th, 2014. That pipeline was constructed in 2014. And so those were similar crude oil pipelines. There were 12-inch lines, both of them. So here's the overall map of the pipeline where it would start up here in Platteville. Here's the portion through unincorporated at Adams County, goes through these other counties, through Kansas, and then down into Cushing, Oklahoma. That just shows overall Adams County and the area of what we're talking about where the pipeline would traverse. So the Saddlehorn Pipeline Company, LLC, is a Delaware limited liability company. The members, owners of Saddlehorn are Plains Pipeline, which is Asset Holding Company, which is an affiliate of Anadarko, and certain affiliates of Magellan Midstream Partners, LP. The Magellan entity members hold 40% of ownership, Plains holds 40%, and then the Anadarko affiliate holds 20%. Total cost of the project is estimated at $800 to $850 million, and Magellan Pipeline Company will operate the pipeline. And they have assets of approximately $4.02 billion and revenues of approximately $2.2 billion. And they have infrastructure pipelines covering approximately 10,600 miles of pipeline. The site in Platteville consists of a tank farm and pump station where the crude oil is sent through the pipeline to the storage facilities in Oklahoma. The preferred pipeline routes designed to be located parallel to the existing pipelines that were approved for White Cliffs, which were constructed in 08 and 14. So crude oil stored at the Cushing Interchange in Cushing, Oklahoma. It's one of the largest crude oil market hubs in the U.S., and the refineries and the pipelines in Colorado for crude oil are currently over capacity, and the only alternative is to adequately and efficiently transport that crude oil production to a location where it can be stored and then transported to refineries in the country. And it's argued the most efficient, environmentally friendly way to transport oil is by pipeline rather than over the road or by rail. Transportation of the product by pipeline will have less impact on the Adams County roads as well as roads throughout Colorado. This rural location would also have lesser potential impacts to urbanized areas where road and rail routinely traverse. Easements have been acquired for all of the properties within the 24-mile stretch through Adams County, with the exception of one parcel, which is a state-owned one, but I know they're still talking with them. I'm sure they could update us on that today. The portion of the pipeline that extends through Colorado, it includes Weld, Morgan, Adams, Washington, Kit, Carson counties, and it's approximately 154 miles. The ultimate carrying capacity of the pipeline will be 433,049 barrels per day. It would operate at a max PSI of 1,440, but average it would be 900. As a comparison, a typical crude oil truck holds approximately 200 barrels of crude oil. Saddlehorn Pipeline will be able to carry the same amount of crude oil as 2,165 trucks per day at ultimate capacity. White Cliffs Pipeline, as a comparison, is approximately 150,000 barrels per day. There are contracts already in place with shippers to transport and deliver the crude oil through the pipe. These commitments are for a specific number of barrels that contractually have to be delivered within a specific time frame. The 504 miles of the additional pipeline that's outside of Adams County is already designed to run parallel to the existing pipelines, and it's the preferred route. The preferred alignment's the shortest distance from the point it enters and exits out of Adams County. The impacts of a third pipeline in this corridor are limited since it's planned to run contiguous to the existing pipelines through the county. So the applicant did go through an evaluation process to determine the best route to minimize impacts to private properties, environmental constraints, road crossings. And the pipeline alignment was determined because of the rural, relatively flat terrain that has been used for agricultural purpose, and ultimately it'll be a 50-foot permanent easement. The new pipeline is expected to be completed this year. Saddlehorn submitted information for 2 additional alignments through the county. Both Alignment 1 and Alignment 2 are options that are feasible, but they are longer routes through the county and they impact more landowners. They also cross more streams and creeks than the preferred route. So here are the 3 alternatives. The preferred route's the red line that starts at 168th and Peoria and traverses approximately 24 miles down here to 72nd and Meridian at the county line. And these are the 2 alternative proposals that they looked at that you can see in the yellow and the blue. So the pipeline would be identified physically with markers at regular intervals so that individuals are notified there's a buried pipeline. The whole system's monitored by their supervisory control and data acquisition, or SCADA system. It's 24 hours a day. It would monitor any problems, sound an alert. They also do hydrostatic testing that's performed prior to product moving through the pipeline to make sure that it's going to operate safely. The pipeline's comprehensively regulated and permitted under federal U.S. Department of Transportation regulations for transportation of hazardous liquids via pipeline. And the U.S. DOT regulations require pipelines to meet design requirements, comply with numerous requirements during construction. They also continue to govern how the pipeline's operated and maintained after construction is complete. They are also responsible to fulfill the requirements of a nationwide general permit, and that NWP permit authorized construction of facilities such as pipelines and waters of the United States. The applicant has agreed to enter into a development agreement that will cover a number of issues such as pre-construction requirements, construction, operational standards, maintenance, and consideration for future development. That agreement is complete. It's available to sign today. We did do a minor correction to the agreement to reflect the county's new organizational structure in the document itself. The Planning Commission heard this case on June 11th. They recommended unanimous approval. There was no unfavorable citizen testimony at that hearing. There were members of an organization called LIUNA Northwest Region of the Laborers International Union of North America present at the hearing. They were in support of the request. 2 members provided testimony encouraging the applicants to consider their members for construction of the pipeline. The applicant presented a detailed overview of their company and project. Planning Commission asked the applicant about the split ownership of the company that I had detailed, and more specifically, who'd make decisions concerning the pipeline. And again, the Planning Commission also asked about Magellan's safety record. The safety record is provided in Exhibit 2.6. The applicant stated the pipeline would be operated under Magellan's safety protocols and plans. The other 2 partners in the pipeline ownership act as a shipper and equity interest. Here's just some general pictures here. This is way at the county line looking south at 76th and Meridian Road. This would be 72nd down here. Here are markers over in the next county over where you can see where the pipeline runs. There's looking north on Meridian Road. This is Adams County. And that's looking east at 72nd Meridian. You can see where the existing pipelines run with the new plantings that they put over it. And this is at the other end. This is east 168th and Peoria Crossing, and that's looking west 168th and Peoria. That's south, looking where the existing pipeline markers are. Just another view of that. And as you can see, it's going to continue to be farmed pretty much as you see. So with the exception of the short-term construction, it shouldn't pose any additional impacts in the environment or surrounding area. The line's buried, it's monitored 24 hours a day. Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval. That includes 33 findings and 2 conditions. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have questions for staff? Commissioner Odoricio.
Yes, I have a couple questions. On page 5 of the report, you talk about different setbacks, or the desired setbacks for spacing between this and the White Cliffs pipeline. Could you go into further explanation or summarize what you're referring to there?
Sure. So I think probably the question was, why couldn't they locate it in the existing alignment with the White Cliffs pipes? And basically what they're talking about is there's minimum requirements. They have to set their pipelines away from existing pipelines. Those 2 other pipelines are 12-inch pipes. This one's a 20-inch pipe, so the 20-inch pipe has a greater separation. And basically what that says is they have to put it where they're proposing to maintain a safe distance from the other pipes.
So we're talking about that it's roughly the same general route as the White Cliffs pipeline, but there's just some spacing in between.
Right. Well, they'd be contiguous. You would basically see White Cliffs, and then right next to it would be the Saddlehorn one, running in the same route that you see on the map.
I kind of read it as indicating that there were some spots where we may not be getting the ideal setback, or am I misreading that?
I don't think so.
Okay. if
Go
there's
ahead.
other questions. The other question is, does the county make any money from the construction or the existence of this pipeline?
We do. There is some information. I know the applicant had gathered some in terms of tax information. They'll be sharing that with their presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pulaski.
Mr. Chairman, it's not a big deal question, but how deep do these go?
I believe it's 48 inches, if I'm not mistaken. I think
48.
that's what they were going to bury it at.
4 feet down?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just go on top of that, and I don't believe that it's 48 inches when you're crossing a road. I think it's a deeper inset when you cross the roads just to maintain for traffic and pressure and that. Let me ask you, so what was the thought process into the two alternatives, and how did they come about with those two alternatives? Because I just want to understand, although I know it's being recommended for the preferred layout, which is a straight line, the red line, I do want to know the thought process that was put into the two alternatives and how they came about, or the county came about those two alternatives.
Sure. So basically, we use the areas and activities of state interest permitting requirements in terms of the conditional use to borrow some of the environmental studies and some of the other studies relative to the pipeline. And generally, we've always required that they show 3 alternatives for us to consider. They should all be viable and approvable, so that if one isn't preferred by the board, they could choose an alternative route. And basically, these alternatives are more or less mirror the White Cliffs pipeline, so they basically use the same alternatives. But they needed to provide 3 viable options that we could consider, just in case there is some fundamental issue with the preferred alignment that we'd want to consider one of the alternatives. And they do the same kind of analysis for all 3 in terms of environmental impacts, road crossings, stream crossings, and try to demonstrate that the one, of course, that they pick would have the least impact. But that's the thought process into those alternatives.
Thank you. And another question would be, how many other pipelines follow this same route? I know that you said White Plains,
2.
so that's it, so 2 with this one, or 2 other than this
This
one?
one would make 3.
This one would make 3, okay. Commissioners, any other questions? I have a question about personnel. So this is completely buried throughout. Are there any daylight areas throughout this pipeline?
There is one. There's a valve station. I believe it's at Dieter Winters Road and 128th. I'd have to double check the report, but somewhere in there, it's just a valve station that does daylight. So it's basically a shut-off valve.
And all the protocol for safety for those is followed with fencing and,
It would be.
right, okay. Commissioners, any other questions?
Daylight, when you say daylight, you mean something that comes above ground?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for staff? No other questions for staff. Would the applicant like to step forward and make a statement? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Hine. I'm at 1 Williams Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74172. I'm joined today with a number of colleagues from Magellan and others that have helped us with our project. I'd like to introduce those. Behind me, Jason Smith, who's our Director of Asset Integrity, and Brandon Cox, who's our project engineer. Zach Howard is here today, who is also our Manager of Asset Integrity. Doug Mitchell, who manages our Environmental Health and Safety Department. Ann Stevens has helped us with our regulatory filings here at the county. Jason Brinkley, our outside legal counsel here in Denver, as well as Jenny Lai, and Jenny helps us with public relations issues. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I continually am impressed with Chris and his knowledge of our project. That's a testament to how deeply your staff has dug into understanding our business and our project and why it's needed. Chris, if you could go ahead and thank you. I'd like to give you a couple of just additional points on Magellan Midstream Partners, whom we all work for, and then address any questions that you may have from our team. Magellan owns and operates the longest refined products pipeline system in the United States. We have a long history in owning and operating heavy capital assets, pipelines, distribution terminals, and storage tankage facilities. We operate in 24 states, including the state of Colorado. Our model that we operate under is that we don't own the commodities that we transport and store. Those are owned by others, whether they're producers of crude oil or refiners of refined petroleum products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. But we have a business that's 85% fee-based. And it's fee-based, meaning that we earn our revenue from moving products on pipelines and collecting a tariff. So very similar to a toll road operation. The further you go on a toll road, the higher you pay the tariff. And that's how we earn our livelihood. We have 53 terminals connected to our own pipeline system in the Midwest, including Colorado, as far west as Colorado and Wyoming, going as far east as Chicago, and 27 terminals connected to other pipeline systems in the southeastern United States and marine facilities scattered around the Gulf Coast. Thank you, Chris. But as it relates to our position here locally and our assets locally, we're no stranger to Colorado, and we're no stranger to Adams County. And let me expand on that and tell you a little bit about us. We have a large storage distribution facility in Aurora and another in DuPont. The Aurora facility is near the junction of I-70 and 225, just southeast of those interstate connections. That's where we bring in, by pipeline, large volumes of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel from refineries in Kansas and Oklahoma, and also as far away as Texas. Also, we're connected to local refineries in Commerce City. So overall, our pipeline system is connected to 50% of the nation's refining capacity. The interesting story about our facility in Aurora is that there's a 10-mile pipe that leaves Aurora that goes to the Denver International Airport. It's the exclusive supply of jet fuel for DIA, transporting over 1 million gallons of jet fuel every day into DIA. We've never had an incident on that pipeline, and it's been operating safely for years. Okay. Well, we're here today to talk about crude oil. Colorado, in its presence in our national infrastructure of crude oil today, is significant, where more and more crude is being produced here. And as staff pointed out in Chris's presentation, the safest way to move that crude from where it's produced to where it's consumed is by pipeline, not by rail car and certainly not by truck. Pipelines are very capital intensive to build. At the least cost, they're about $1 million a mile. On heavy costs, as you mentioned, going under streets, Commissioner Tedesco, that gets into much heavier costs. In fact, we've got recent examples on a pipeline we built down in Houston where it was more like $8 million a mile to construct that pipe because of going under a lot of different roadways. So it's a very capital-intensive project where we're looking to build a 600-mile system that would leave the basin, the Niobrara Basin, and go to Cushing, Oklahoma. And I'll explain that in a little bit greater detail in just a moment. The other assets that we have that transport crude oil, primarily down in the Permian Basin of Texas, where there's another big basin, West Texas, and the closest market that can consume that crude is in the Houston area. So we have 2 large diameter pipes that transport crude from West Texas down into the Houston area. One of those was just finished last year. I'm happy to say that that pipeline is operating safely. Those that helped us construct the pipe, several of those men and women that helped build that system were of organized labor and did a great job helping to build that system. The total mileage that we have in crude oil pipes today is 1,600. That wouldn't include the saddle horn system that we're here today to speak to you about. Okay, Chris. So as it relates to the saddle horn pipeline system, Chris mentioned that it's a joint venture with Magellan as the operator and as the company that will be constructing the pipeline system. It will be a 600-mile system. We recently announced that the origin of the system will be extended from Platteville up to Carr, which is in Weld County, 50 miles north of Platteville. So overall now that's a 600-mile system. The total cost of that system is now $880 to $950 million. All lights are green. The pipeline that we're utilizing for this system has been manufactured and rolled and delivered from Birmingham, Alabama. So it's 100% domestic steel. The pipe will have a 20-inch diameter, have the capacity to move as much as 400,000 barrels per day, although the initial capacity when we complete this in mid-2016 will be closer to 200,000 a day. The shippers that we have committed on the system, one is Noble, the second is Anadarko. They're the two largest shippers in the area. And we're pleased that one of those companies has taken an equity position in the pipeline project. Okay. And then lastly, let me sum up a question that was raised regarding jobs and other benefits to the community. And there are several. With the 24-mile section that crosses Adams County, there are not only construction jobs that go with that, but there's tax benefits that come to the county. On average, $17,000 a mile, and there's 24 miles, so that's an average of $400,000 a year that will come into the county just from a tax basis alone. During the construction process, we'll have more than 1,000 men and women that'll help build this system in the state of Colorado. Many of those will be here in Adams County. Between Adams and Weld and Washington and Morgan, there'll be approximately 400 men and women helping to build this system. So during that time frame, which will be several months of construction, we'll have additional revenues going into hotels and restaurants, service stations, convenience stores, all sorts of other services that will be utilized locally as a result of the pipe. So there'll be some additional benefits. Now, as it relates to construction jobs, we're in the bid process at this moment, which means that many contractors have the opportunity to provide not only a financial bid for their share of construction or their interest in constructing for various spreads on this pipeline project, but also to convince us of their safety record and their quality of building pipelines in the past. And we look at all three. More than half, or approximately 50% of those companies that have bid on our project are unionized labor. And as I mentioned earlier, we have had union representatives work on our systems in Texas and elsewhere. In fact, we have 1,600 employees in those 24 states that I mentioned. Most of our employees are in operating field positions, unlike the men and women here with me today. Approximately 300 of those are represented by the United Steelworkers today. So we're a company that is open to union representation, working to help us build a safe pipeline system. So let me summarize. Chris did it better than I could today to tell you that pipelines are the safest way to move any volume of liquid from where it's produced to where it's consumed. The Niobrara Basin is one of the low-cost basins in the country. That means that if crude prices go to $50 or even below, there's going to be a couple of basins that continue to produce profitably. And the way that they sustain that is by having the most cost-effective mode of transportation available to them. So we have done everything that we could have, in our view, to work cooperatively with staff to make sure that you, as elected officials, were aware of who we are and what we do. At the end of all of this, I hope that you believe that we're the company you want doing business in your county, because we want to be here, and we have a good track record of being here and a safe track record of being here. So with that, we'll be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, Commissioner Odoricio.
Yes. On, I did read the section that you said that we get about $17,000 per mile in tax revenues. That's through property tax, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's important. What I would want to ask you or staff is there any costs associated with the county with having this particular pipeline in the county? You've mentioned the tax benefits, but do we incur any costs to offset some of those tax benefits?
The costs that we collect are the permit fees that we would process for them. So obviously the conditional use or any building permit or floodplain use permits or things that have those fees associated with it.
No, I meant costs to the county.
So there will be additional costs related to the construction. I think that's what Chris is talking about, is that they'll come in and get construction permits through the county. We'll send there's some review involved in reviewing those construction plans, et cetera. We're going to collect additional permit fees to cover those costs.
Got it.
So we don't expect there to be any net increase in cost to the county with this pipeline.
That's what I was trying to figure out. So it looks like that the net, the fiscal, if we're just looking at it fiscally, the net benefit to the county is almost $500,000 or over $400,000 a year. The next question is you mentioned that we have up to 400 jobs here. On page 84 of this presentation, it does mention that you're going to be bringing in some existing jobs. How many of these jobs do you think will be local?
Well, Brandon may want to comment on this, but Commissioner O'Dorisio, what I had mentioned was that the spread between the first 4 counties, from Weld through Adams and then on to the next, Washington and Morgan, we expect approximately 400. So whether that'll be split evenly, 100 per county, Brandon, you may have a better feel of that?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Brandon Cox with Magellan Midstream Partners, 1 Williams Center, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm a project manager on the job. But like Bruce had mentioned, the first spread that we're going to construct this with will be about 95 miles long. And it'll, 20 miles in Weld. I think we go through about 2 miles in Morgan, 24 miles in Adams, and then we go through Washington as well. As they construct, it'll be very much, they'll start in probably Platteville and just kind of work their way down the line, kind of like a moving assembly. So the workers will, more than likely, this is a very specialized construction job. There's not a lot of contractors out there that can build a pipeline like this. So they may come from Denver, they may come from Washington, who knows? So they'll bring their core team in to construct that, but then they'll also hire a lot of local laborers and things like that as well. So it's hard to tell how many Adams County residents may be involved in the construction of the project, but at this point. So does that answer your question?
The answer is that we don't know for sure,
Yeah.
right? Okay. The only reason I ask that is because I appreciate that you guys are highlighting safety and quality and local benefit. And those are the things that I look for in these types of things. Because God forbid something happens with the pipeline, our names are going to be the ones attached that people locally are going to point to. And that's why it's important that we focus on quality and safety. And I think that if something were to happen or anything, like I said, God forbid, people locally are going to say, we have people locally who can handle these things and do this the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I asked those questions.
Commissioners, Commissioner Pulaski.
Quality and safety are pretty obvious, but one of the things that I totally appreciate is driving Highway 85 and the area here in Adams County where we have so much truck traffic. I am so glad not to have more truck traffic added to. So I truly support a project like this that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
I'll second the truck traffic on I-76. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? I'd just like to say, I'd love the fact that you're pointing out the safety, and I did do some research on Magellan, and I am very happy to see that, you do use skilled labor. I think that's critical in any type of safety aspect, especially an operation like this. I do like the idea that you come in and you're utilizing the workforce that we have available here to the extent we don't know for sure, and I'm sure you don't either. But I especially appreciate that. I mean, our local workforce is very critical to us. And to address the issues of safety within the county, I think Commissioner O'Dorisio hit it on the head. At the end of the day, we make these decisions, and regardless of whether you're the liable party in this, we take the brunt for allowing this to happen within our county. And so we're very cautious as to who comes in and who does the work. But I will say this, after looking at your company and researching, I'm very confident in the safety record that you have for this type of project. And I'm very confident in the skilled labor that you intend to use for this. And I just hope that it's a livable wage and we can employ some of our constituents here in Adams County. So thank you. Commissioner O'Dorisio.
I do have one other question. If we look at the neighbor concerns, it looks like you had a meeting, let's see, what day was that? February. And there was a couple concerns. Did you have any comments on any of those?
We did have a neighborhood meeting in Fort Morgan. There were approximately, I believe, 10 residents that did participate and come to visit with us. Most of those were inquiring about whether the pipe was going to run through their property or not at that stage. But we had a number of Magellan representatives, some of those here with me today, and I was there as well. And we addressed virtually every question that residents had at that moment, and followed up with them to make sure that we addressed everything that they asked of us. The stakeholders that we did engage with, some 30 of them, to acquire easements, as Chris pointed out, we had all but one of those completed and executed, and came to terms with the landowners in a good faith basis. The last was the state of Colorado, and that's now been resolved, and we have that easement in hand as well, and have posted a bond. So we're 100% done in Adams County at this moment.
Thank you. And all of those were voluntary, of course, right? Yeah, great.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. At this time, is there any public comment on this case? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to make public comment at this time? Seeing none. Commissioners, do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm going to give a brief statement and then follow it by a motion. Based on the fact that the pipeline route that we're looking at does avoid residential developments, it's following an existing route. All easements were done with no takings. It's all voluntary. Looks like they've got all their ducks in a row as far as working with the property owners. I like the fact that it's a straight line on an existing path rather than trying to create new paths. I think that they've clearly set the bar for themselves on safety and quality, and I particularly look forward to seeing that commitment to quality, safety, and the local benefit. So with that said, I move to approve RCU 2015-0009 to approve with 33 findings and 2 conditions.
Quick thing I wanted to note, there's 2 things. One is the first condition can be deleted because we have the development agreement here today.
Thank you.
And the second comment, I just wanted to make sure that the development agreement is included in the overall acceptance of the case.
So at this time, I would amend my motion to say that I move for approval with modifying the first condition to requiring the development agreement to incorporate the existing development agreement that has been brought to our attention today. So that would be a modification to that first condition with 33 findings and 2 conditions. Would that be sufficient, Mr. LaRue? Okay, that's my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Odorizio,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Tedesco.
Yes. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.